Hello, everyone. I am so glad you could join us for today's presentation. I'm Carrie Spender. I'm the Education Coordinator for Tumbl. And if you follow Tumbl on social media, today's presenter will look very familiar. Leah Parent is many things, including a Tumbl ambassador and a member of our education team. She has really elevated the education content for Tumbl with her passion for creative and positive coaching, and we are so glad that she's joining us. Today's topic is conditioning, cardio conditioning to be specific, and ways to build a positive relationship with exercise by keeping strength training fun. I cannot wait to show you what Leah has prepared for you today. So a copy of the presentation will be emailed to you shortly after the presentation. So enjoy, sit back and enjoy. Feel free to share that presentation with folks who you think might be interested. If you peek around at our platform, you'll see that over towards the right is a chat section. Feel free to add your comments, questions there, and let us know where you're tuning in from. We always have folks, I love seeing in the registrations that we have folks that join us from around the world. So without further ado, I am so excited to bring you Leah Parent. Hi, Leah.
Hey everyone, thanks Carrie. My name is Leah Parent. I'm a competitive team coach, judge, and Tumbl ambassador. This is my second time doing a live webinar with Tumbl, and I am super excited to share some new content with you guys today. So thank you all for coming, and let's get started.
Have fun.
So in today's session, I will share some creative cardio circuit ideas that you can take back to your gym. And we'll explore some strategies to make strength training something your athletes look forward to rather than something they have to do. My goal for this webinar is for you to learn, be inspired, and maybe even rethink how you approach conditioning altogether. It's a great time to talk about this stuff because we're jumping into summer training and programming for strength training. So I hope you walk away with some great ideas. I have broken down the cardio circuits I like to use into 3 categories. So I just went with traditional circuits, gymnastics-specific workouts, and then what we'll call challenge circuits, which it's basically just cardio that involves an extra game or challenge for added motivation. I'll try to touch on all the different kinds I've done and hopefully provide you with some new ideas to add into your training sessions. I'll show a few short videos so you can see the setup that I'm talking about, and I'll explain what's going on, as well as provide a link to a document with all of my circuits in our follow-up email. Keep in mind that these were designed for my optional gymnasts, and exercises, numbers, rounds, and difficulty should be altered to fit the athletes in your program. So it should always be personalized to whatever athletes you're working with. This webinar will also be recorded and posted to the Tumbl YouTube channel if you'd like to go back and view the videos. All right, so let's jump into section 1. So first, I'd like to review some basics of power and cardio. The textbook definition of cardio is simply cardiovascular exercise, meaning repetitive or high-intensity activity that increases your heart rate. As coaches, along with keeping our athletes healthy, we aim to use this type of conditioning to build power, muscular endurance, and strength to get through the high cardiovascular demands of, say, a floor routine. So like I said, this is a perfect time to think about these things as we're jumping into summer training and we're trying to build that strength as the kids are learning new skills and they're preparing for potentially a new level. Also, I'll go through some of my staple circuits I use with this goal in mind. So this first one, I just call it plyo. It's a plyometric jump circuit. It involves lining up tumbling mats across the floor, jumping and rebounding down them, and doing exercises on the way back. The exercises down the mat can be like 2 feet on the mats, 2 feet over the mats, 1 foot up and down, 2 feet up and down, and so forth. The variety of exercises over the mats help the athletes train 1 and 2 foot landings for stability, and that translates directly to takeoffs and landings. To add a fun contest at the end, I have my optional gymnasts do a front tuck at the end of the line, and they tally their sticks on a whiteboard. And this simple addition has made this a favorite in our gym. So let's check out the video. As you can see, we just have like a line. Oh, I think we can start it from the beginning. Okay, there we go. All right, so you can see we have the line of the tumbling mats down the floor, down the diagonal. And I just had them do a couple different various exercises to give you guys an example of what kind of things we do. And the exercises can be anything on the way back. So rebounds, kick lunges, handstand walks, slider push-up walks, whatever you can think of. So they go all the way down to the end of the panel mats, do a front tuck, and then if they stick, they get to tally. Sometimes I add a reward. So like whoever has the most sticks after the first 20 minutes of conditioning gets to be done early. But a lot of the time they choose to just keep going because they want to stay in the game because it's super fun. So the next one, we just call this 99 hills and valleys. So this is kind of an altered version of the plyometric jump circuit that I just showed. We call it 99 hills and valleys because we don't just use tumbling mats. We add trapezoids and spotting blocks and different mats of different heights. Because of the differences in height, I only have them jump up and down on 2 feet on the way there, just because there's that difference and I don't want them tripping or doing anything silly. The exercises on the side are all core exercises generally, and they do 33 each for 3 rounds, which totals 99 of each exercise. So that's kind of how we came up with that name. Yeah, circuits like these, I'm constantly reminding them that they need to be focused on what they're doing. You know, they're not just jumping down the mats. They're focusing on their landings. They're focusing on not tripping over the mats or rolled ankles or silly injuries or anything. So that focus needs to be there. And I only do the front tucks with my optional gymnasts or gymnasts that I feel like this is a basic for. So I wouldn't do this with like, you know, compulsories or anything where the front tuck is new to them because I wouldn't want them doing that while they're tired. All right, so moving on. The next one, I just call it gym laps. Pretty self-explanatory. These are super fun and easy because you can get creative depending on your gym setup and equipment situation. So it can be completely altered to fit any gym or any situation. And a lot of times it requires no setup. So I like to use this as like a warm up at the beginning of the day to kind of get their blood pumping or as a full conditioning circuit, depending on how long it is. So it basically involves a circuit of exercises that travel around your gym for a certain amount of rounds or a length of time. We'll go ahead and look at the video. And obviously this is great to do when the gym is empty. So at the beginning of practice or in the morning or at the end of practice at night. So I realize this is not always possible for everybody if you've got a busy gym, but I like to sneak these in at the beginning or the end if we can. Yeah, and I really like to give the girls the option to make their conditioning harder. I feel like having that choice is really powerful for them. So I tell them they can do things like add a lap or add 5 extra of whatever exercise was on the list or add 5 back tucks at the end of each lap. I like doing that because it gives them a chance to actively choose to increase the difficulty because they want to get stronger. It also gives me feedback about them as an athlete and it pushes the rest of the team because a lot of times when their teammates are working harder, they want to as well. I do this with my younger athletes as well. For instance, when we're doing like timed exercises, say it's 45 seconds of movement with a 15-second rest, I tell them they can either use that 15 seconds to rest or they can hold a plank if they want to get a little bit stronger. You know, and I always say it like that, like if you don't want to rest, if you'd rather do a hollow hold or something because you want to get stronger, go for it. You know, and it's nice to see like those younger athletes that step up and they get into the hollow hold and some of their teammates look around and like, oh, like I want to do that too. You know, so it helps motivate the rest of the team as well. And I do feel like when gymnasts feel a sense of autonomy and that power of choice about their training, they're more likely to stay motivated and enjoy the process. All right, so this next one is just called the Partner 100. This one's simple but challenging because it's nonstop high intensity exercise for a short period of time. You can do it with any exercises, but I typically use core or exercises that are a little bit quicker. I like to use this as a cardio or core warm up and have them do 2 or 3 rounds or 2 or 3 different exercises and then jump into a different strength circuit or just use it as a warm up at the beginning. So what they're doing is partner 1 is going to do 100 push-up shoulder taps while partner 2 is sprinting down and back on the floor. and then they switch. And then partner 2 does 90 shoulder taps while partner 1 does the sprints, and then they go back and forth until they get down to 10. I generally time it too. So go ahead, look at the video. Yep, so you can see they're doing the exercises, the other partner's running. Pretty simple, just kind of gets them moving at the beginning of the day. It can be altered to make it easier simply by cutting down the numbers. So it doesn't have to start at 100. We've started at 50 before. So there's lots of variation in that. When doing something like this, if I'm timing it and we're using it as a way to see that they're building strength or building speed, I'll time it and I'll keep a record of it, like for whatever period of training that we're in, say it's throughout the summer, and the girls try to continuously beat their previous time. I'm a big fan of data, so I like to keep track of performance and how the girls are progressing. So something simple like this just kind of helps to see if they're getting a little bit faster. I saw a question in the chat. Time for rec, or how much time for a rec class do you give for conditioning at the end? I think with our rec classes, I think we allow for about 5 minutes. We generally do a 15-minute stretch, and then they have a certain amount of time on each event. Then we normally do all of the events, vault bars, beam, and floor. And then at the end, I think it's generally like about 5 minutes of a quick conditioning circuit. I like to make sure that there's conditioning mixed into the circuits though. So if I have rec kids on bars, they're doing something that's building strength. So maybe they're hanging on a bar and they're picking up pit cubes with their feet and putting them in a stack, so they're getting some core strength in there. So if I'm limited on time, especially like a rec class where you only have 1 hour a week, I try to mix that in as much as possible. And then this next question, how long do the circuits go for? It really depends on the time of the year, and it depends on what practice is looking like, essentially. My optionals do 30 minutes of conditioning during season, and then during summer, they jump to 45 minutes. But generally during summer, we have something at the beginning, some sort of warm-up that's a little bit more active, like a plyometric circuit or something, something like this, like the mat push complex or the partner 100. So they're getting a little bit of cardio at the beginning and then their actual strength at the end. And then the type of strength that we're doing just changes throughout the year. So they're not doing like high intensity cardio all throughout season or, when we get to state regionals and nationals. So things start to change a little bit as season goes on. So it kind of varies. All right, so moving on to the mat push complex. This is another across the floor activity where one partner does a series of exercises while the other partner holds a static position. For instance, a plank or a hollow hold. While the main focus is on the exercises that partner 1 is doing, the hold that partner 2 is doing is also important because this is where the athlete is maintaining body tension and core control while tired, which is very similar to what we want in a routine. So taking a look at the video. So the one partner is going to go back and forth with the mat. I believe the exercises were like mat jumps, toe taps, alternating lunges. Yeah, so they have a certain number of each, and they go through that series, and then they switch. All right, just saw another question pop up. Do you have any conditioning for preschool age kids? So this webinar is mainly geared towards team athletes and older team athletes. But I do have a lot of conditioning for preschool age kids as well. I definitely think the focus when you have preschoolers or rec kids, the focus should always be fun. It should always be games. They should not know that they're conditioning is what I say. But when they're done, I always make a point to say, like, who feels stronger? Like, don't you feel good? Like, that was so good for your body. Like, I bet, pullovers are going to be so easy tomorrow. Like, I make a point to say that they're a lot stronger at the end. But at the beginning, I like to do things like relay races, something as simple as you have 3 kids on a team. I'm thinking more like a school age rec kids right now. Like 3 kids on a team, and they have 3 pit blocks at the end of the floor, and one person has to like sprint down and grab one and bring it back, and then the next person goes. And you can change those exercises between running, crab walks, bear walks, duck walks, things like that. And so it's a game, like it's a relay. I love to play Simone Says, so Simon Says, but for gymnastics. And I'll use that to say, like, okay, like Simone Says, do 3 perfect push-ups, or Simone Says, do 5 frog jumps, or Simone Says, hold and arch up, so that's an easy way to play a game, but also mix in like different exercises. Yes, that is a great idea, Carrie. You should do a preschool conditioning one as well. Yeah, but specifically for the little babies, like I mentioned before, like picking up something with their feet, like picking up a Beanie Baby and dropping it in a bucket, or picking up a pit block and shuffling across a bar and then dropping it into a hoop or something. Little things like that where they're still getting strength, but it's more of a game or an activity. All right, so this next one is, we just call it panel mat races. This is a favorite in my gym. Like the girls like beg to do it, and I'm always like, okay, that's great. But I like that they enjoy it, and I like that they have fun, and that they do truly like ask to do these things, which makes me happy. This one is done in small teams of 2 to 4 kids. I give them a short exercise complex, like 10 forward mat jumps, 10 rocket jumps, 10 backwards mat jumps. Each person in the team needs to go through the exercises once, while the others hold a static position, like a push-up or a hollow hold or a plank or something. So one person will go first. They'll do 10 mat jumps, 10 rocket jumps, 10 backward mat jumps, and then the next person, and then the next person, and then when they're done, they're done. So they're trying to race against the other teams. They get super competitive when we're doing this. But, the team that finishes last has to go through the exercises one more time, but what I do is they can save themselves if each person on the team sticks a back tuck. So, it's pretty simple, but it's just kind of a funny thing to do at the end. Even though it's a race, I still want them to focus on form though, so I watch very carefully, and if the team who finished last had the best form out of all the groups, which potentially could make them finish last, I save them and I give the back tuck attempt to the team who finished second to last. So, technique and form and making sure you're focused on not tripping over the mats and things like that. So that's still always the main focus when we're doing things like this. And I feel like I'm constantly reminding them to think about what they're doing. All right, finish with the stick. This slide is really just, you can really take any existing strength list or circuit and put a spin on it to make it more enjoyable. I generally use these just to kind of spice up conditioning, if it's gotten a little bit complacent, or maybe they had a hard practice, or the energy is just a little bit low or something. And I just take whatever we're doing that day and I add something like this. So, and this is my favorite way to do it, is by adding a back tuck stick challenge with my older athletes. So say the exercise is 50 V-ups. After they're done with 50, they do a standing tuck. If they stick, they're safe and they get to rest. And if they don't stick, they have like 25 more V-ups. So they do 50% of the exercise that they just did. So it's a really simple addition, and they get into it and they get really competitive. So it makes it fun. And a lot of times they'll like partner up and they'll go against each other, or we'll just all keep track and see who can have the most sticks. It's always a super exciting day if someone gets sticks every single one, so they don't have to do any extra, but they get really into it. All right, so moving on to section 2. These are more gymnastics-specific circuits, so they add in different acro skills and things, or they translate more directly to the actual skills that they're practicing. They go further than the basic circuits by adding in those skills and related essential strength. And sometimes I use shorter versions of these on the actual events as warm-ups or side stations, just to kind of switch things up a little bit. So this first one, this is just an example of what I call acceleration circuits. So these are to get their feet moving as fast as possible through the obstacles. If you have speed ladders, those are amazing to add in. We have 2 of them and somehow they're always lost, but I love those. I like to do these with my compulsories pretty frequently, as they're still figuring out coordination while also trying to build speed, and they find them really fun. It definitely provides some entertainment putting obstacles in front of the less coordinated ones, but it's all in good fun. So checking out the videos here, and I generally do some sort of 1-foot hopping or landing, something through the cones, the speed ladders. I use dots. Um, as you saw in the picture at the beginning, the Tumbl tape. That's something from Tumbl Trak. It's just like a rainbow Velcro line, but it's great for footwork if you don't have a ladder. And with these, sometimes I do, they'll have 5 rounds of this, or sometimes it's something shorter if I don't have a lot of space in the gym, like maybe it's on the vault runway, and I'll just use like the Tumbl tape, the cones, the ladders, and just kind of have something that goes down one runway and back on the other one. And sometimes I'll have something that's more like right foot focused, and they do 2 rounds of that, and then left foot focused, and then different hopping, landing, absorbing, different things like that. And I really like doing that for a vault warm up. Oh, yeah. Okay, just reading Sean's comment. Mainly work in dance studios. Yeah. So this is great because, like I said, it doesn't require a lot of setup. And if you have things like dots or like little shapes and things like that, like it doesn't have to be, super crazy setup or anything. I definitely am a fan of like using what you have. So like in gymnastics gym, I end up using pit blocks a lot. So it's a full conditioning circuit, like a full cardio circuit where all they use is a pit block. So they're jumping side to side, or they're doing squats where they're tapping their butt to the block, or 1 foot hops around it or something. I've come up with full like injury prevention circuits using pit blocks because they can do squeezes and things like that. So got to get creative when you don't have a lot of space. All right, so this next one is, I just call it the punching complex. I created this complex focusing on punching with the goal of training stronger contact with the board in your Chenkos and punching and connecting tumbling passes. I sometimes use this as a vault warm-up as well, or as a full conditioning circuit. But I typically make each exercise 30 seconds with a 15-second rest. The first exercise is always alternating between 3 jumps and 3 rebounds. So a jump meaning like a bent leg, like they're bending and doing like a squat jump, and then a rebound with straight legs just pushing through their toes, because I want them to feel that difference. So I always start with that one: 3 jumps, 3 rebounds, going back and forth. And then the rest of the complex progresses through exercises like jump up and absorb, step down, punch back up, step down, jump, split jump, and then step down, punch, split jump. So I kind of tell them like, think like a beam split jump versus a floor split jump. So I want them to feel the difference between those 2 takeoffs. And with my optional, sometimes I go all the way up to like step down front tuck, or step down front tuck rebound, or step down front front. It just depends on what we're aiming for that day. So in this video, I kind of had them just each pick an exercise. So they're just kind of showing an example of the different things that we do, but generally it would not look this chaotic. It would be all of the kids doing the same exercise for 30 seconds and then resting. But this is just the best way to get an example. All right, the next one is cardio for tumbling. So it involves a cardio circuit with a tumbling pass into the pit added in. I like the exercises on the side to focus on punching and dynamics for tumbling. So if you see in the video, there's like general up and down mat jumps. I have 2 springboards set up, so they're jumping forward and back, so they can feel the punch for a forward takeoff and a backwards takeoff. So you can see that girl in the blue right there doing that. Got some 1-foot takeoffs. They end with some calf raises before they go into the pit to do that tumbling pass. And again, like alter this as much as needed. These girls that I use these videos for are level 7 through 10. So a little bit of a variety, but doing, say, a round up against ring layout or something into the pit, or even a full or something, is more basic for them. So I tell them if they feel safe doing that, they can, but if they want to stick with a front tuck or a round off bat tuck or something, that's okay, because the importance is that they're getting the strength in. I'm not super focused on the passes being super hard. But yeah, I believe circuits like this are helpful in developing the short burst, high intensity capability needed for successful routine performance. It really helps athletes strengthen their bodies to push through fatigue at the end of the routine so they can safely execute that last pass. So if this is something that you've started to do in your gym, within your programming, it's definitely something you want to work up to. So they can go through this, and this can be used during a floor rotation, like as an endurance day, but they can work up from those basic passes and go into their higher level passes. You just have to be careful. You have to know your athletes, never start out with a full tumbling pass, always start slow and help them build and progress the way you would like a normal skill progression. All right, the next one, these are super fun. This is an acro obstacle course. So this is just another example on how to incorporate gymnastic skills into a cardio circuit. We just call them acro obstacle courses. And I usually set up like 2 to 3 on the floor, so there isn't a lot of waiting around. I think I set up 2 on this day. Yeah, so it's got a couple of the elements from like the acceleration circuits. I think that girl is doing mat jumps and there's a back tuck at the end. There's like back handspring Sissone. Front tuck split jump, so just things like that. So they're incorporating those exercises with the skills. And again, same thing, constantly reminding them to be careful, think about what they're doing, think about their landings. And if they ever feel not safe doing something, I never push them to do that. There should always be a way to alter things, in case they need it to be a little bit less difficult, or if you have someone that has an injury or an ache or something, I wouldn't have someone do this full out if they were recovering from like a sprained ankle or something like that. There always should be ways to alter and make things safer for the athletes. But these are fun to get creative and switch out skills and equipment and everything for more variety. So they're very adaptable. All right, so this next section, I just call these challenge circuits. So in this section, I'd like to just talk about how to make it fun. I personally think all of these are fun and the girls really like them, but these are more on like the game side, I would say. Cardio is not inherently fun for most people. I think we can all agree. If you can find ways to add challenges and games into your conditioning, I believe it can be enjoyable for everyone though. But this starts by establishing a culture where conditioning can be fun and that healthy competition is motivating. So it starts from the ground up, it starts from your philosophy and your culture in the gym. And I found by creating this environment, you not only get athletes that work harder during strength training, but you start to see it bleed over into their event rotations as well. It makes me super happy. I'm our main bar coach, but it makes me really, really happy when, there's an athlete that's not having the best day, she's kind of dragging a little bit. And I see one of her teammates say, hey, let's do this together, like 1 for 1, I'll take a turn and then you take a turn, or I'll race you, let's see who can get through our basics faster. Or why don't we add like a competition, how many dismounts can you stick or step back? And that makes me super, super happy because they're helping to motivate each other in a positive way. And they're kind of pulling their friend out of that like slump. But yeah, talking about games, I feel like when some people hear the word game in the gymnastics industry, the first response is to think of a waste of time, especially more like high level coaches. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to play hide and seek in place of conditioning, but what I want to do with this last part is present gymnastics and strength focused challenges as a motivational recharge. So we've all got those kids in the gym with motivation issues. It has always been and always will be the biggest question. How do I get this kid to work hard? How do I get this teenager to want to do this essential strength? And it will always be a challenge, but I like to use these as a way to revitalize that motivation and energy, encouraging positive associations with working out through play because it helps prevent burnout, it builds a competitive edge, and it promotes long-term engagement in the sport. Just looking at a question here. Do you ever go over breathing techniques when doing cardio workouts to help the kids be able to finish the circuit or not feel so winded? That's a good question. I wouldn't say that I've specifically sat down and talked to them about it, but I definitely make sure that there's planned breaks. So between the rounds, if they have a round of like releve walks around the floor with their arms up or straight leg heel walks or something, there's kind of like those planned breaks so they're not getting super tired. And I'm reminding them to breathe and everything. This is kind of random, but I saw this one time when I was younger. I read that Michael Phelps yawns before and after a race because when you yawn, you're getting the most amount of like oxygen into your lungs. Like I personally yawn a lot when I'm working out because I'm just not getting enough air in, I guess. I'm not breathing as well. So I used to do that when I was younger and when I was competing. I would yawn before and after my floor routine, and it like completely resets your breathing. I don't know. It's magic. I don't know the science behind it, but I read it one time and I started doing it and it works. So I have told them, like, if they're completely out of breath, try to make themselves yawn at the end of it. And I don't know, somehow it works, but yeah. All right. So this first one is, we just call them stick circuits. This is an absolute favorite for my gymnasts. I even jump in and do these with them sometimes because they're super fun. I do like to condition with the girls as much as possible if I can. It's nice when I have another coach with me too, because they can be walking around and correcting and everything. I don't want to just, not be paying attention to what they're doing. But if I can jump in and do a core circuit or do a stick circuit or something like this, the kids love it. I've always stood by that because I feel like if I'm kind of suffering through it with them and I'm like, grinding and doing everything, I understand what they're going through. Because I remember being an athlete when I was younger and thinking like, you have no idea what you're putting us through, so when I jump in and do it with them, like they love it. And it's more of a team thing. We're doing it together. I feel like it's really, really motivating. So I love these personally. I set up mats for them to flip off of in different ways, and they try to have the longest stick streak. So sometimes we do it in teams, or I pair them up and they try to beat their partner. So this can be set up in any way, but different obstacles like tuck jumps over the half rounds to a front tuck. We like throwing in a T-trainer or an air floor or something. Lots of back tucks and front tucks, or round off layout if they can, round off full if they can, standing full if I've had some of my 10s do those off the blocks. But again, always focused on safety first. But a lot of times I'll say like, okay, like first 1 to 5 sticks in a row gets a point. And then once someone gets 5, they get a point. And then, all right, next 1 to 8. And we kind of go through it like that. Yeah, they have a ton of fun with those and getting creative too, because if I tell them we're doing a stick circuit, they all already have ideas and they want to go get this mat and that mat and everything. So they're fun to build, but then also fun to do as well. I think they're so fun because sticking can be so satisfying, but I always make sure to reiterate the difference between a real stick and a cheated one. I always say sticks should come from doing a skill exceptionally, not cutting it short and sacrificing your technique to make it happen. So again, though it's super fun, these should never be rushed, and proper landing technique should always be the focus. This next one is stick-tac-toe. I think by now we've probably all seen this floating around Instagram or TikTok, but it's awesome. If you haven't seen it, this one is super, super fun. So I divide them up into 2 teams. They get turns trying to stick in a box, like a front tuck. We've done back tucks as well, but they like to do the front tuck off the T-trainer. So they try to stick in the box to get a tic-tac-toe. If they stick, they get to go back in line. But if they don't, they have to go do an exercise from a list and then come back. See how they're trying to stick in those boxes and grab a dot to mark their spot. And again, easily adaptable, because that conditioning list that they're looking at in the front could be anything. It could be just a simple addition to whatever bar conditioning they're doing that day, but they go do an exercise. If they don't stick, they complete that, and then they come back and they jump right in line. I always have them do like simple cardio or like little exercises like calf raises or high knees or something when they're standing in line, so that they're not just standing there. Oh, I saw a comment, team versus coaches conditioning challenge. Yes, it is always fun. It's fun to be able to jump in with them and work out. All right, this one is a little silly. This one is spoons. It's a card game. I don't know if many people are familiar with it, but we used to play it when I was growing up all the time, and it was so fun. So in the actual game of spoons, everyone starts with 4 cards in their hand, and the goal is to get 4 of a kind. So you pick up a card, discard it if you don't want it, or pick it up and then discard another card if you do want it. So in the original game, when someone gets 4 of a kind, they grab a spoon. So it's people sitting around a table. There's a bunch of spoons in the middle, and there's less spoons than players. So you have to be quick. So when someone gets 4 of a kind, they grab a spoon. And then once one spoon has been grabbed, everybody else can grab them. So it's like the race to be able to get one of those. So in this gymnastics version, once someone hits 4 of a kind, they grab a slider and they push up walk down the floor to grab a pit block. So I put less pit blocks than there are kids. I normally do like half. So if they don't get one, they go do a conditioning exercise off a list and then they can jump back in the game. So kind of like the stick-tac-toe. And I have these giant cards that are like the size of a notebook paper. And we use those because it's obnoxious and it's funny. So how they go through, and then once someone gets 4 of a kind, they go, and then they're off. So it's a race to the end of the floor, and then they go do an exercise if they don't make it. And again, completely adaptable. The list can change, the exercises can change. We've done like reverse plank walks, like where this, I think that's what this one is, where the slider's under their feet. They can do handstand walks. They can do anything down the floor. Yeah, they have a lot of fun with this one too. We've even done it like in the beam area. So like they play the game in front of the beams and they have to go like under overs on the beam to make it down. I've done it in front of a pit. My first gym that I worked at, we had a really long pit. So they would do it at the edge of the pit and then they would walk through the pit with their arms up above their head. So yeah, so it can be done with any exercise in any part of the gym. Really anything that kind of like moves down the floor. So there's a lot of room for creativity in these. Is the gymnast picking the exercise? No, actually, but that's a good idea. She asked if is the gymnast picking the exercise to go down the floor. Generally I call it out, but I kind of like that because then when they finish, they can call out what exercise it is and everybody kind of has to do that. I might use that. All right, so this is a extra one. This didn't really fall into any of the categories, but it's kind of just a unique one, so I wanted to share it. And it can be altered to fit any type of conditioning, really. But we call it the Muhammad Ali workout because he once said the quote, "I don't count my sit-ups from the beginning. I start counting when it starts hurting because those are the only ones that count." So this was meaningful to me when I read that. So I give the girls a list of exercises with super low numbers, like 3 pull-ups. And the first time they saw this, they were like, what? Like all the numbers were super, super low. It was like 10-second handstand hold, like 4 climbs of a rope climb, like, like very little numbers. And so I essentially tell them if the number is 3 pull-ups, I tell them to do pull-ups until it gets really, really hard and they feel like they want to stop. And then they do 3 more. So they don't start counting them until they hit 3. But I once had a kid try to hold a handstand for like 6 minutes. And I had that same kid try to do like 300 push-ups. So I started to give them a max out number. So they can count from the beginning, but maybe it's a max of like 20 pull-ups. So if they get to 20, they've maxed out whatever the exercise is, and I'll put their names on a whiteboard and they can like initial where it is because they're super proud of how many exercises they get to max out. But I use this as a lesson in self-motivation because it gives the kids a chance to push themselves past the assignment. And it teaches an important lesson about muscular endurance, about not giving up when things get hard. I'm constantly telling them, your mind gives up long before your body does. So continue to push yourself. Like when you feel like you're getting to that point of failure, you can push yourself and do 3 more, So, and really it depends on the gymnast, because you are going to have some kids that go, oh, I only have to do 3. And they might push themselves to do 6 or something. And then you're going to have that kid that wants to max out on everything. And that's okay. Every kid is different. And that level of motivation and how much they want to get out of their workouts is completely up to them. And whatever strength they do or don't get is up to them. And that is their results. Yeah, so in conclusion, when it comes down to it, any conditioning, any assignment can be altered to have an added level of motivation, in my opinion. We're all constantly working to learn how to be better for our kids. We want to freshen up our workouts, keep things interesting, keep these kids happy and working hard. And I think this is a great way to do it by promoting a positive relationship with exercise and an excitement for competition to foster that relationship between athletes and exercise, as well as strengthening the coach and athlete relationship. A few things need to happen, though. So athletes need to feel a sense of autonomy. As I mentioned earlier, the knowledge that they have a say in their training and that they are doing these things because they're choosing to, not because they're forced to. So if we look at the next slide, I listed those 3 things. So yeah, so autonomy, they're conditioning specific muscle groups that are directly affecting their skill mastery. So I remind them constantly that what a certain skill what skill a certain exercise is for. So they attach a goal to the work they're doing. Say it's, we call them killer V-ups. You do a V-up, but when you get to the top of it, you lift yourself up off the floor, and they're awful. That's why they're called killer V-ups. But when we're doing them, I get some groans as soon as I say it, but I'm like, hey, like, this is your kip. This is your kip cast handstand on bars. Like, maybe you're a little bit, or maybe you've been trying for a while. You're not quite there. Maybe doing whatever number of these is going to help you get there tomorrow. So I'm always reminding them that this is something that they're doing because of a goal that they set. This is a direct result of, I want this. Like, I have this dream. I have this goal. I want to get better. Here's what I need to do in order to get there. I also believe they need to experience the power of choice, like I said earlier. So that's whether it's the choice to make the circuits harder or easier, or the choice to condition at all. So when given the choice to make things more difficult, they're choosing the more difficult path because they want to get stronger and they want to get closer to their goals. If one of them complains about what we're doing, my response is always, you don't have to do this. And I don't say it in a condescending way, but I simply remind them that I'm in no position to force them to do something they don't want to do. They're allowed to choose not to condition, but they also have to live with the consequences of their choices if their lack of strength results in them not getting a skill they want or not moving up levels. When you put those choices back in their hands, you help them create internal motivation. And I personally find that you don't have to like bother them as much to get stuff done, because I'm constantly, this is about you. I work for you. I come in here, I have a job because you say you have a dream, and I give you the direction, I give you the workouts and the progressions on how to get there, so this is about you. This is about what you want. And if you don't want to condition, or you don't want to get your workout done, that's completely in your hands. And it works so much better than forcing them to do something or yelling at them to get a result, or, and anything like that. I wouldn't say reverse psychology, but, giving them that choice, and letting them know that this is something that they want, not something that I want. This is about them, not me. And the last one, they need positive associations with exercise. The number one way to kill this is by using conditioning as a punishment, which you should never, ever do. I feel very strongly about that. Taking strength, which is something that directly helps them with their skill development, and using it as a punishment creates a negative association with something that's supposed to benefit them. And it's extremely detrimental and can lead to really unhealthy habits in the future. So definitely something to stay away from. How do you handle lack of motivation with conditioning with younger and compulsory gymnasts? Honestly, kind of the same way. Like, with my preteam athletes, as they're starting to kind of get more into team conditioning, I'm constantly saying things like, it's our favorite part of the day. We get to do strength, so I like kind of throw that at them all the time. Or I'll say, if one of them says, I don't like conditioning, I say, well, I love conditioning because I love feeling strong. I love that I'm able to spot you because I'm strong. I love feeling healthy, so I kind of try to set that example too. When I say, like, well, I love this, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel strong. It makes me feel powerful. And even just like saying those things, like without commenting on anything they said, but just setting that example, that really helps. I think I mentioned earlier in the presentation, with my younger athletes, I'll give them the option to rest or to work harder, and that helps a lot too. I fully believe like that power of choice, and just giving them that option and allowing them to make things harder, it really, really helps them figure out how to want it for themselves, and not because they have to. But it is something that starts early, as early as possible. And then it's just something that's completely, talked about consistently as you build that culture. Instead of using conditioning as a punishment, what do you recommend to get them to understand? Not quite sure what that means. I think like getting them to understand that they have to get their stuff done. I guess I just tell them, what do you want? Like, why are you here? Like, I tell them to remember their why, so if we're doing some sort of conditioning exercise and they don't want to, or they're not getting their assignment done, instead of assigning conditioning or something, I'll say like, hey, like, why are you here? Why do you come in here every day? Because you don't have to be here. This isn't like school or something. You're not being forced to be here. So why do you want to be here? And then when they tell me that goal, maybe it's a college scholarship, maybe it's, making it to level 8 or level 10 or whatever, And I say, then that's your why. That's why you're doing this. Use that as motivation. Use that as a reason to get this stuff done. All right, we follow a 4-stage training cycle: preseason, meet season, postseason, and off-season. What would you recommend implementing during meet season? Our athletes typically start the season strong, but tend to decline, primarily due to endurance. Yeah, that's a great question. So that's really the 4-stage training cycle that I do as well. During meet season, injury prevention becomes really important. So that build up during preseason is a lot of endurance, getting them like doing cardio floor routines or tacking on endurance at the end of bar routines and things like that, so they can get through their routines safely. So there's a little bit more cardio, there's more strength training. And then as soon as season starts, we kind of taper off a little bit. And that's when we continue with the strength. So we don't completely drop off, but we add in more of like landing stability, like different, like 1 foot landings or 1 foot takeoffs, and then 2 foot landings as far as like vaults and floor tumbling and things like that. We make sure we're working on that stability. So it just changes a little bit. It gets more into like banded workouts, more body weight stuff. So it just changes a bit, but I never want to completely taper off of conditioning. The younger gymnast, doing some of the conditioning with them goes a long way in motivating. So they really like it when you're also doing the V-ups. Yeah, I completely agree. How do we find motivation for higher level rec kids? They like the gym, but don't like to work hard. Yeah, so I honestly feel like that's one of the harder things, because the kids that I was kind of gearing this towards, like the team athletes or the older ones, a lot of times they have those big goals. Like I said, they have that why, whether it's a college scholarship or a big level or things like that. But with the rec kids, they don't always have that motivation because they're kind of just in there to do their weekly class, to have fun, stay healthy and everything. So it's hard because they don't always have something like a meet or something, or a higher something to reach for. There are higher levels in the rec program. But I guess it's just more talking about the skills that they're going to get better at then. So if they have a goal, I feel like they should always have a goal sheet. There should always be a list of skills that they're working towards. So I think with the rec kids, I mainly just use that like skill motivation, like this hollow hold is going to help us with, keeping our core tight. It's going to help us extend into our back handsprings and things like that. It's going to help us get our pullovers better, or the leg conditioning that we're doing is going to help us jump a little bit more aggressively when we're doing our handstand flatbacks or jumping for a back handspring. So I'm just always like relating what the exercise or what skill the exercise has to do with. Yeah, it does sound like motivation is a big topic. I think it's definitely the big thing that we are constantly trying to do, is motivate these kids. So this next one just says, coach the human. I just felt like this was important to remind everyone of, everyone here is amazing coaches. We're doing this because we love it. That's why you become a gymnastics coach. Every single one of our athletes will be done with gymnastics at some point, some much earlier than others. And yes, our description is to teach athletes gymnastic skills, but we're first and foremost coaching a human, an individual that will only be in gymnastics for a short period of their lives. And we have that opportunity to mentor these kids and teach them healthy habits that will follow them for the rest of their lives. And I do not take that lightly. Whether we intend to or not, they'll carry the things we say and do with them forever. It has to be a conscious and constant choice to make those things positive by the things you say, the example you set, with your own habits and the questions you ask, the questions you allow them to ask. We are changing these kids' lives completely. So it's definitely not something to take lightly. Oh, I like that. Panel mat pushes can be turned to fun with calling them car races for the rec and preschool kids, using mini dominoes for the littles. Yeah, that's super fun. I've seen some people, I have not personally done this with my kids, but it's like hungry hippos. So they get in a group and they have to like all panel mat push into the middle of the floor and grab pit blocks and then pull their partner back. So there's generally like an athlete laying on the panel mat and then 2 teammates pushing them back and forward. So that's another like fun way to make those a little bit more exciting too. Yeah, so in conclusion, I believe it's so important for gymnasts to develop a positive relationship with exercise because it truly sets the foundation for a lifelong appreciation of movement, health, and personal growth. When athletes view training as empowering rather than punishing, they're more likely to stay motivated, avoid burnout, and prioritize their overall well-being. A healthy mindset towards exercise also encourages body positivity and self-confidence, which are key elements not just for athletic success, but for mental and emotional resilience, both in and out of the gym. You know, every gymnast has that moment where she's done. You know, sadly, it's not something that we can do forever and ever. So at some point, every gymnast is going to have to say goodbye to the sport. And you want to know that you did everything you could to build that former athlete into a human that can now walk forward into their lives and have a healthy relationship with exercise, know how to motivate themselves and not be forced to, you know, and be able to have those, like, keep those healthy habits that are going to take them throughout the rest of their lives. You know, you don't want it to just be they're doing these things just because they want something, just because they're trying to get skills. Like, they're also doing it because they love themselves, they care about themselves, they want to keep their bodies healthy, they want to avoid injury, you know, because that's not just applicable in gymnastics, it's applicable for the rest of their lives. So if we can do that, if we can teach them these habits and allow them to find their voice within the sport, they're going to continue that as they go on. And I always let them ask questions. I tell them all the time, like, you are allowed to ask me why we're doing something. You're allowed to ask me what it's for. You can say, I don't understand this, or I don't know why this is helping me, you know, and in a respectful way, you know, but I tell them, please ask me. And most of the time they're scared to, you know, so I have to constantly say it. It's a constant reminder, like, just talk to me, communicate, you know, but, but I let them question. I don't say, do it just because I said so, or do it because that's what we're doing today. You know, I will say, I always take that opportunity to say, hey, yeah, let's talk about that. You know, is there a different option for you? This is my plan for you. This is why I have you training this skill, because of XYZ. It's going to lead to this. You know, if there's something, you know, why don't we give it a try? And if it's not working down the line, we can always pivot. We can always look at the code. We can pick something different. That's the beauty of optional gymnastics, you know. But I let them ask me questions because it helps them find their voice. It helps them be more involved in the process. Like I said, I'm our main bar coach, so I make their workouts, like their monthly workouts that change each month. And I even tell them, like, I'll put the workouts up and I'll say, hey, look at it, let me know how it looks. As the first week goes on, I say, let me know if it's too much or too little. Like, are you not finishing because there's way too much on there and I timed it wrong, you know? And then at the end of the month, I say, hey, I'm taking them home and I'm going to lesson plan this weekend. Please write any notes that you have. So I let them star things. I let them cross things out. I give them full, like, involvement in that process because I want them to know that this is for them. And if they're involved in it, they're much more motivated to get it done. Let me just read one of these comments. Yeah, I fully agree. Sean said, with hearing these comments, I think it's okay to tell the kids what the expectations are, not necessarily your expectations when doing conditioning. Kids tend to think that our expectations are high when in reality, we're guiding them to see how successful they can be. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can see all the potential in them in the world, and we can want it for them so badly, but if they don't want it for themselves, they're not going to get there, you know? So it's just kind of showing them, hey, like, I believe in you. I'm giving you this workout. I'm giving you this challenge because I know you can do it. I know how strong you are. So, you know, let's see if you can do it. Let's see what motivation you can pull out of yourself. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this webinar today. And I hope I've provided you with some fresh ideas to bring back to your gym. Thank you for all of these questions and all this chat and everything. It's been super fun to interact with everybody. But now we've got some more time for Q&A if there's any extra questions that anybody had.
Yeah, my goodness, the Q&A has been super active, and yeah, thanks for participating, Leah. I feel like you could easily make a side gig as personal trainer because I feel personally motivated now. I'm getting in the gym. I want you there with me. It looks like a lot of fun in your gym. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are going to stick around for just a few more slides. We do have a giveaway coming up, so you might want to hang on just a few more seconds. If you do have other questions that we didn't get to here in the presentation, you can still feel free to drop them in the chat, or like I said, you're going to get the presentation automatically sent to you via email, but as well, we'll be sending a Tumbl Trak email to all participants, everyone who registered for the event, with some more links, and feel free to respond to that email with any additional questions you have as you're going through your day or thinking about conditioning. So Tumbl Trak loves doing virtual events. We've got a great couple more coming up in the lineup. In July, we will be featuring Jeffrey Neely from Branch Gymnastics. He's going to do a presentation on that's called Beyond the Back Handspring, Creative Uses for the Air Barrel. As well, Sarah Fennell Cooper from Happy Gymnastics. If you don't know her and you're a preschool or rec educator, you need to know her and go find her. She's going to do a presentation called Preschool Happiness. And then rounding out our live event schedule will be Brett Wargo, Smart Uneven Bar Progressions. That date is to be announced in October, but you can register for these events. Make sure you're following us on social media. We do have a landing page, tumbltrak.com/events, where you can see all upcoming events as well as our past events are all there. The YouTube links are there. Leah's on there with another presentation. So feel free to go to that page to see some of our past offerings as well. Tumbl Trak is on the road. We are about to start our gymnastics or USAG season. We are going to National Congress and we'll be at lots of the regional events. And if any of you are planning to attend those events, please stop by our booth. We love seeing folks when we're out on the road. So it is time for our giveaway. Leah, I thought maybe we would try something just a tiny bit different. I was motivated by your presentation. And so Leah is going to pick a number 1 to 50, and we're going to use the chat section to choose the winner based on the number that Leah randomly picks. But if you'd like to participate in the giveaway, go ahead and in the chat, name a Tumbl Trak product that you saw in Leah's presentation. So I'll give you a second to do that. In the meantime, you're going to find lots more ideas, registration, links. Leah is featured in a lot of our social media, as I mentioned in the beginning, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Go and click all the buttons and follow us there. Well, I like seeing what people recognize as Tumbl Trak products.
I love seeing fun sticks.
I know, they're our favorite.
Yes,
Leah and I share a love.
They're so simple. Yes, they're so simple, but they're so easy to use, especially in those like acceleration circuits and everything. But oh my gosh, I could do a whole webinar on a million ways to use fun sticks.
There you go. Yeah. Also, if you have presentation ideas, things that you want to know, we definitely took that note from the questions about preschool conditioning. So that's on my mind for sure. Okay, ready? So Leah, I'm going to scroll back to the top. You can pick a number 1 to 50.
Okay. Let's go with 17.
17. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Edgar. Edgar is the winner of our giveaway. Edgar, I'm going to send you a gift certificate for Tumbl Trak equipment. If you want to drop your email right in the chat there, I'll make sure you get that certificate following the presentation. So just wanted to finish up the presentation. This is our sales team, Shelly, Jen, Michelle, and Mary Beth. They are the ones on the answering the phones at our trade shows, joining the rest of the team. So feel free to give them a call if you have any Tumbl Trak questions. And once again, an enormous thank you to Leah for motivating us today and for bringing such creative and fun ideas to help improve cardio conditioning. So I hope you all enjoyed the presentation. Thanks for joining and see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.